much more modern. And we haven't really had any conversation on the trans reparations that went through without really any sort of objection.
So who is next?
I believe it's Tariq and then Nico.
Okay, go ahead, Tariq.
How's everybody doing? I'm hearing a lot of different um, adversarial retorts about reparations, and reparations is not as difficult as many people try to make it seem. Reparations is very simple. It's for the foundational Black Americans, the descendants of the people who built the country from scratch and they were never compensated. Our ancestors created all of the wealth for the country, and that country has been locked in and maldistributed into the dominant society, and we've been locked out of it. And that money has compounded. There was a gentleman who called up earlier saying that after a few generations, generational wealth disappears. That's absolutely not true. After a few generations, that money compounds and it becomes stronger and it becomes bigger. We've been inheriting a debt as foundational Black Americans because we have never, ever, ever been compensated specifically for the wrongs that were done to us. And it's time to get that compensation now. Reparations is a strong topic now because we've tried to play the game where we're going to be polite. We're going to try to play the kumbaya game. And unfortunately, the dominant society has made it a part of the culture to practice anti-Black racism as a part of a culture. So instead of us trying to keep playing nice and play the kumbaya game, we're saying we just need to be compensated so we can do our thing. We need to do the right thing. People say we need to move on. We cannot move on with an inherited debt, and we're still suffering from that debt. So it's only a problem when foundational Black Americans are talking about being compensated for the wrongs that were done to them. When the Asian community, when they got reparations, nobody complained. The Native American community, they get reparations times 10. If you look at government grant programs and government grant websites, there's so many programs and set aside funds earmarked specifically for the red Native American tribes, but there's absolutely nothing earmarked for foundational Black Americans or Black people specifically. Anything that Black people get, it's under the cloak of a minority benefit where all people benefit from it, which is another form of slavery. So we're saying we don't want any more slave deals where if we get something, everybody else has to get a piece of it too, because that's been a trick bag and that keeps us on the bottom rung. So we're saying that we, as foundational Black Americans, for the first time in history, we need to be specifically compensated for a specific wrong that was done to our specific group. And it's not that hard to determine who's a foundational Black American. Most people in this country, they know their background, they know where they're from. We as foundational Black Americans are the only non-immigrant groups in this country. So we understand our background. We have bureaus and we have ways to determine our lineage, to see who was on the census forms back in 1870, all of that. So we know how to determine who's who. We're just getting to the dollar sign. What's going to be the correct dollar sign? I say we start at $20 trillion. That's a start. And when people say that that's going to harm the economy, it's not going to harm the economy because we're giving money to all of these other foreign groups. We're giving money to Ukraine. We're giving money to Afghanistan. And that money doesn't really cycle back into our economy. When we get our reparations, and I'm saying when because it's not an if, we're definitely going to get reparations because it's the right thing to do and justice always prevails. When we get our reparations, that's going to boost the economy because that's going to circulate more money in the economy and that's going to make a better society for everybody. The problem is because of the culture of anti-Black racism, there's a psychic sick benefit that many people in the dominant society gets by thinking about us being deprived. Everything has to be about deprivation for foundational Black Americans. Their status and power is judged by our deprivation. So there has to be a cultural shift where that's not going to be normalized anymore because we're no longer going to participate in that. We're saying that we have to have an equitable society where we produce justice, and justice is compensating the people who have been the most wronged, who have built this country from scratch. That's the right and just thing to do. And I'll land my plane there.
Hey, thank you for sharing and being patient. Can I just ask, because I haven't heard this term before, and apologies for my ignorance, can you explain for the space what do you mean by foundational?
Black
Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
Black Americans, that means a Black person who is a non immigrant. We don't use the term African American because that makes us equal to immigrants, and we did not immigrate from Africa. Foundational Black American is a Black American whose ancestors were the foundation of America. We didn't come to America. We built America. We're the only group who actually built it from scratch. So that makes us foundational Black Americans.
Okay, thanks
What
for
do you mean?
explaining.
What do you mean
So,
by built from scratch?
Built from scratch.
Like we explained.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean from
That
scratch?
means there was no country, there was no United States until Black people built it.
Well, I would have to push back there because Black people did not build this country on their own. That's just not historically accurate.
Right. We did.
And
But
also one other point, if I may, is that very few people that I know in my life have any generational wealth. I have no generational wealth. My best friend has no generational wealth. So this idea that every living American would have just nonstop generational wealth, I also have to say that's just not factual.
well, not every American have generational wealth in tangible land or money, but the generational wealth comes in whiteness. There's the monetary value to whiteness itself. That's why immigrants came over here with $2 in their pocket, because they understood that their whiteness would get them benefits, privileges, intangibles. A perfect.
Wait. Hold on. Just 1 second, please. I don't really want to, call some whiteness. I mean, people didn't come here because of whiteness. Like we didn't. This country wasn't founded on anyone's color, and slavery existed in many different lands. I think you were listening when we spoke about it. But slavery happened on many different continents, people of many different colors. And so slaves were never chosen for their skin color. Different people had tribes and factions that sadly sold from all over the world, sold their own countrymen, even though it wasn't really a country. And the people with the emojis, Ash, can you help with that? It's just respectful, and we don't have that in the space. That just constant heckling.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, guys, here's the thing. This is
so,
a
so
difficult.
say, yeah. I mean, racism is definitely a thing about color, but slaves weren't chosen for their color, and I don't think slave owners and tribes that sold their own, people into slavery, I don't think they did it over color either.
Man, well, that historically that's not correct, because over here in the early colonies, they absolutely made it color based, and they were very explicit about slavery being color based. And the white people who were indentured servants, they would be able to work out a contract, and they said that the Black people or the Moors would have to be enslaved for life. So they absolutely made it on a color basis. And they codified it by saying that the children of Black women will be enslaved. So it was explicitly based on color. In this country, when Black people were trying to get out of slavery, and even when we were free, there were still Black codes and there were still laws that would keep us in a detrimented situation. So all of it was about race. And when you look at some of the documents and the laws in this country, and even the Constitution, there's a famous passage saying that a Black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. That was in the Supreme Court ruling. So it was very explicit about race, and we were targeted specifically as Black people, as foundational Black Americans. No other group was targeted like us. Where
Well, I mean, the East India Company took Irish first. That was before the African slave trade. But I really appreciate. We have got a lot of hands, but thank you so much for coming, and I appreciate it. And you can definitely get back, but let's let some other people
yeah,
respond.
absolutely. Thank you so much. And the Irish were paid, by the way, just to throw that in there. So
So
yeah,
when
so I don't know what that means, but I don't even want to know what that means. But I appreciate you coming. I will say one thing, if I may. Probably the most sound part, and you can take this as constructive criticism. I'm a strategist. Probably the most sound part of what I heard you say was the economic factor, that it would incentivize the economy. I don't particularly agree with it, but it's an argument that's been made by other groups. It's an argument that's been made by several other groups, that if you that the money will trickle down the economy, right? So I did want to sort of give credit to that. But thank you for sharing. Not really comfortable with "they will pay" kind of thing, because I don't even know what that's about. Like, I'm not down with that. But anyway, but I appreciate.
So before we go to the next person, can I just jump in? Because I want to just kind of, there's 386 people listening to this space, a lot of folks who came in when we shifted the topic to reparations in San Francisco. This has been an incredible space. It's been very respectful. All of the speakers, I think, have been very respectful. And whenever I get the chance to co-host a space with Phenomenology, we really do try to make sure that every voice gets to be heard. We're not going to tolerate ad hominem attacks. We're not going to, tolerate people going after each other personally. And the thing about the emojis is, if you're using emojis to, like if I'm speaking and you're laughy facing because you're mocking what I'm saying, if you're down in the audience, that's fine. If you're a speaker, it's classless and it's not in keeping with what we're trying to the discussion that we're trying to facilitate here. And to that point, I've listened to a lot and participated in a lot of spaces on reparations, and I think that the nuance of the argument that the advocates of reparations are making is lost in so much of the rhetoric, right? If you ask the average white person, they probably believe that reparations means that all Black people everywhere, no matter where they came here or whatever, get a big $5 million payout from the government, right? The nuance is important, and there's a lot I think that's said that is just missed in the way that these conversations are normally had. So we're trying to have the conversation in a respect, but I just wanted to reset because we do have a lot more people here. Chris, you're next.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to come up and just be able to ask Tariq a question. So first of all, Tariq, I you don't know me, but I am a co-host with Monica Matthews, and I know you did a very long space with her, and I heard it was very cordial. I got a little tense at times, so I just it's a pleasure. I'm fascinated with you, man. Honestly, I grew up in a foundational Black neighborhood, all the way for the first 13 years of my life. And so I did want to ask you a couple of quick questions really quick. But first I wanted to say, I'm going to withhold my personal position on reparations because there's like 15 million policies out there. So I am sitting back watching what's actually going to move forward. I am fascinated with the San Francisco one. Personally, I would like to see California go bankrupt and split into multiple states. So if that's what it takes, have at it, But my question for you, Tariq, is given that the foundational Black American...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Can you say that again?
So I said I was going to withhold my personal judgment on reparations because there's multiple proposals out there, some of which they just span a lot of different dollar amounts.
No, but about California, something after that.
Yeah, so I said that I am fascinated by this, and if it passed in California, San Francisco, or whatever, I would personally want to see California go bankrupt and split into multiple states, if that's what it takes.
Okay, so I live in California. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see that.
Okay, well,
I don't think that's American. I'm just going to tell you right now. I don't think it's American to want another state in the union to fail. I don't want Texas to fail. I've been calling everything out on this space. I don't care where anyone stands. I'm sorry. I'm just speaking it like I see it.
Okay, that's fine.
I live in California. I pay taxes. I pay a whole hell of a lot of taxes in California.
You definitely do. So my question...
And I would appreciate you not saying that while I'm in the space. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want California to succeed really good. I just want it to be, fair to everybody in California and not be a communist in a couple of different areas. But the point is, Tariq, I wanted to ask you a quick question. So there's no debate that even in California, as we sit, there are a number, and across the country, there are a number of foundational Black Americans that have spent tens of years of their life in prison for marijuana charges and other things. And we've seen the liberal left legalize marijuana, and now they're out there literally selling it. but these people are in jail still,
Right.
right? And so, and have had their lives taken from them in many ways, in fatherless homes, and the repercussions of some of that stuff and whatever. My question for you is on two fronts. One, what is your opinion on the fact that they had to that they I'm going to just say they had to include the $1,200 for trans people in order to justify it in liberal California? So what is your take on that being included, given that the foundational Black American community is fairly conservative, socially speaking? And
We're
then
going to cap it at one, Christopher, because it's not your interview. And a lot of people have had their hands up. I made Tariq wait a long time to speak. If you want to contribute, you're welcome. But let's let other people contribute so he can answer your question. But you're not interviewing him here. So you've already interviewed him. We've heard. So go ahead, Tariq.
okay. Yeah, Tariq. So that was my question for you, man. And it's a pleasure to be able to hear you respond.
Right. Well, the thing is, there's always a way or a culture about undermining us, foundational Black Americans. Anytime we're trying to get something tangible, they will go out of their way. And when I say they, I mean the government. They will go out of their way to incentivize and to legislate resources for other groups. They will focus on trans, they'll focus on immigrants, they'll focus on foreigners, people in other countries, they'll focus on the environment. Everything is all about ultimately undermining us. When it comes to giving us something, they have to say, hey, we'll get you next, but we have to prioritize these other groups. And I don't get into the liberal and the conservative thing because it's all the same. It's two wings on the same bird. Non-political, whoever's giving the tangibles. If the Republicans are going to give us our reparations, I'll rock with the Republicans. If the liberals are going to do it, I rock with them. Anybody who's going to give us our tangibles, that's who I'm going to rock with. And foundational Black Americans deserve reparations, and we'll get reparations. It's the right thing to do, and that's the American thing to do.
Phenom, were you going to say something, or did you want to move
Well,
to the next person?
I mean, I just think that we should just, there are a lot of programs. There are a lot of programs, specifically like loan programs, education programs, subsidized programs for Black Americans. So I hate when things are just put into kind of like a selling point instead of just like a genuine conversation, because I mean, it just sounds disingenuous to me. So, like saying things like built from scratch, that it was built on the backs of the slaves. I mean, many of us
Your
in here
whiteness is intergenerational wealth.
yeah, like I'm just sorry. Like I had zero ancestors with slaves. I had, I mean, it's just, it's become like a mythology
So that
almost,
is it.
and I don't think that's American. And so it's just like I don't, I think that these need to be like real soulful, honest, human to human conversations, but not like a talking point and not like a sales pitch, because we're all human in here. We all struggle. We all have things in our family that we've had to overcome. You know, it's
So
it's not. It's just to like villainize a whole class or race of people because we came here in a time when slavery was across the entire globe. It was a part of humanity, sadly, and it wasn't just this idea that some white guys in Europe were like, how can we just totally go ravage a country and just steal people away? That's just not what happened. Slavery was happening for generations before, and anyone from England came here, and many people came here with no one and with nothing. And then there were also people who bought slaves and were sold into slavery. But just to say, like, to rewrite history, that's all our history is. And then also to say that, like, because someone did something wrong that was wrongly legal, generations ago, is now suddenly the fault of the family tree that has grown forth afterwards. I just don't see that either. That's a hard sell for me.
ma'am,
Now, something that would be more realistic to me is if you wanted to find some way to go back to that specific family that held a plantation and had someone in your family as a slave, and you wanted to go to them directly, that makes more sense to me. But I I and my children and their children, they don't need to be punished for something that happened that was a bad part of our humanity. And further, in the Civil War, there are many men and women that fought very hard to end slavery, and that's never mentioned in these conversations ever. It's just it's usually full of just hate. And I also, my best friend's actually Black, and I know how people talk, and they talk when they're alone, because I get to be part of that conversation because she's my best friend. And so I think those are things that need to be said.
Well, man, it was the U.S. government. It wasn't just one family. It was the U.S. government that solidified slavery, and that's who we're targeting for our reparations. They need to pay us. It was the government who codified our enslavement. We couldn't get out of slavery because of the United States government, and that government still exists, pointing to slavery.
But the government is made up of people, Tariq. It's not just some headless entity. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So you're talking about people.
Whoa. Who's talking? Please.
Sorry, that was me.
Please mute. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, well let's go. Let's
have Tariq finish real quick, and then I want to say something, and then go ahead.
Yeah. We're talking about something that happened with the U.S. government. People talk about slavery being in this place and that place. A lot of these other governments don't even exist. And if there's a problem with slavery there, they need to deal with the slavery there. We're dealing with the slave issue here and the problem with slavery and the legacy of slavery. And it's still the same government that committed these crimes of humanity. And that has to be rectified by the same government. When people say, well, I didn't own a slave. Well, your families immigrated to a country that was built on the wealth of Black labor that was not compensated. So they inherited the debt of the United States. So,
wait, but you're saying that again, like this entire country was not built on the wealth of
yes,
Blacks.
It was, man.
Some people held slaves and many didn't. And many people of all different, backgrounds that came here built this country. There was nothing
true,
here.
Ma'am. That's not.
Yes, it is
because
true. It is
no,
true.
It's not true, man, because if that were the case, you wouldn't have fled your homeland in Europe and certain places. The wealth of this country was built by foundational Black Americans.
No, wait. Will you repeat that? You're saying that we left Europe
Yes,
because of slaves?
You left because of the wealth that was generated from Black labor. It got you out of the slums of Europe, and you had to come here in order to be successful. That's what I'm saying, ma'am.
We came here because of the tyranny of a tyrannical government that overtaxed, stole, and didn't allow us to worship the way that we wanted to. It was basically what's happening now in our country,
ma'am,
in many ways.
It wasn't about religion. They came over here.
Let her finish, and then we'll go back to you.
Well, really, the space isn't meant for each speaker to just keep going. It's like you've said your piece, and I'm really glad that you did, and thank you for being here. And then I said mine, and then it's not meant to just keep going back and forth like that. We've got a lot of people speaking. So you said your piece. You feel these certain things, and now I'm telling you how I feel. And I just think that speaking in those broad terms is not helping the cause in any way, because this country was built on the sweat and blood and tears of many, many people, and not just on slaves. So let's move on.
It's not true, but go ahead.
No, I just wanna... and now trying to. That's just
not true. Not true. It was built by a foundation of Black Americans.
No, it wasn't. But you've had your time to speak, Tariq, and thank you for being here. But it wasn't true. The slaves were part of America, and slavery was part of the world, and it was sad, and Americans fought to end it. And it's still happening in places like Libya, where they're still lining them up and selling them. It's horrible.
To do with us, ma'am.
So I just want to say
when you were a slave has nothing to do with
Yes,
me.
it does. You're in the same.
Okay, I'm going to mute you for a second because this back and forth. I want to say something to this, and then we can move on, if that's okay, Phenom. So what I want to say is, okay. My family came here in 1985, okay? My family's paid. Somebody is not on mute, and it's not the host. Okay, it's somebody else. I don't know who it is. Please go on mute. 1985. We have nothing to do with any of you. The ancestors, none of your ancestors, not the slave holders, owners, or the slaves. Nothing, okay? We don't come from even that part of the world where you came from. We came here, okay, with wealth. I'm just going to say it. I pay a lot of taxes every year. My family pays a ton more than I do. I have no ancestors that came here. I have no ancestors who got rich off the backs of any slaves. Okay. And I know that. I know that because I know my ancestors' lineage, and they're from Iran. Okay. And so the fact that you said this, you came to this country and inherited the debt. I got to tell you, if you lost me, man. If you had me, which I was not that you had me, but I'm like trying to give people I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But I came here in 1985. My parents, first generation. My parents brought wealth here. Okay, no, My parents funded welfare and healthcare here. Okay, gleefully. Okay, and no, my ancestors, I bear no shame for what happened in this country. None, zero, zip, nothing. I'm done. I don't agree with that
Okay, well,
because
ask you.
I'm sorry. What? Go ahead.
If your family came over here with wealth from Iran, how come they didn't stay and build up Iran and get the people out of poverty there?
Okay, I'm going to explain something to you. First of all, there's no logical. Please go on mute. There's an echo. There's no logical correlation between your question and what I said. My question had a logical correlation to what you said. I'll tell you again. You said I inherited the debt of this country. And I'm saying, no, I didn't, because we didn't have anything here before 1985. We came here and this country was built. Okay. Should I play a part in keeping the maintenance of this country going? Yes, of course, sure. As much as anyone else, as much as any other citizen. But I'm making a point, and the fact that you're asking me why we left Iran, you don't know what we left there. You don't know. How do you know the dynasty wasn't left there? How do you know people weren't being helped there still? You're making
Because of the
assumptions.
poverty there now. Because of the poverty.
Hold on a second. Let me finish and then I'll let you speak.
Well, Sphinx, it's almost like he's saying, it's almost like, can you imagine?
It's just, I just want to finish this and then we're going to move on. Look, your argument weakens when you do that. When you say, how come that? It's irrelevant. Okay, you don't know that because one country is not doing well, you're gonna say that's a reason for another country to pay reparations. It makes no sense. It's illogical. I'm not even gonna fancy it. But I do appreciate you coming and being patient and waiting your turn to speak. Phenom, I don't want to hijack your space. I know it's late. Go ahead.
No, you're not. I just want to say that the comment about like, why didn't your family go back to Iran and build wealth there? I mean, you could ask anyone from anywhere, including from Africa, why do you not go back and build wealth there? I mean, that was just kind of an outrageous thing to say. You don't know the background of any person on this stage.
Somebody said that tonight and said to a Black person here today, why don't you go to Libya and take your grievances with there? And I spoke up and I said, whoa, this is irrelevant.
Well, that was talking about getting reparations from there, but.
So, but she's right though. But she's right, Tariq. She's right. You got to acknowledge that. But when you say that, you are opening it up to, you know what? To when people say, "Hey, you know what, buddy? If you're not happy in this country, leave. Go somewhere else."
I didn't say all that.
I know you didn't. But you're asking a question that's irrelevant. Where you don't even know if my family still has roots there. You don't know if my family has a foundation there, and you don't know. And here's the thing. I don't know an answer to you. Okay, I was pointing out a weakness in your argument, and you wanted to point the finger back. That's fine, but I'm just letting you know, okay, that's not an effective way to debate. Go ahead.
But you were saying that you had this way.
Like, look, I know that I obviously I didn't really know who you were before you entered the space, and I'm grateful that you came. But just because you're an influencer of sorts doesn't mean that you get to just continue talking. There's a lot of people here. We give them all equal time, and we've cycled back many times and have people come back on the stage as well.
I've been very
Or
respectful. I'm not over talking anybody. I'm asking simple questions, just asking for answers. I'm not over talking at all.
I know, but you had your chance to speak, and then I responded, and then she wanted to respond, but you keep responding, and then it keeps the continuous conversation just
So you,
between
you
us, and then
so you
other people
you
don't.
have the last word. Is that what you're saying, ma'am?
We're the
What,
hosts. She can have the
Okay,
last word, Tariq.
that's
I
fine.
don't know.
Say
I
that.
don't.
Say that you just want
Seriously,
to have the
you
last
have
word.
well,
not
no,
been.
I didn't.
You have
I
been
didn't.
respectful. That's the thing.
I
You have
have.
been
I've been very
respectful. I'm
respectful.
going to tell you right
Yeah.
now. You have been respectful, but you know what? You're also coming back and doing a Q&A, and you're not the host. You're not the host. So
Well,
just
so
chill.
also, there's a total lack of chivalry too to say. So she just wants the last word. I mean, come on. You spoke.
It's her
You
space.
spoke.
She's going
You
to
got
get
to
the last
respond.
word. I'm sure in your
Well, it's
spaces
not.
you get the last word.
It's
I
not
don't
even
know,
about the
but I'm
last
sure you
But we
word.
do.
need the last
It's
word to be truthful. If you say
it's not
You
even
don't get to
about the
decide
last
what
word.
that is.
It's about me responding to the very long conversation that you've had with a few people here on the space. And then, so you said your very long, opinion and statements, and then I responded to several of them. So that doesn't mean that we keep going back and forth and shoot everything down that I said. I didn't interrupt you when you spoke. And then it was my turn to say how I felt. And there's many people here who built America. They came from all over Italy, Europe, Ireland, just all over the Middle East. But in the beginning, we all worked hard. There was nothing here. There was nothing here.
which is
There
not,
was no,
that's
yes,
just
it is true. Please don't unmute your mic when other people are speaking. There was nothing here. There was no welfare here. There was no sanitation here. There were no homes here. There was nothing here.
man.
Nothing here.
That's so untrue.
There was nothing here. There was no civilization here. There wasn't. There was no government here. There were tribes here, and many of them were violent and scalped and killed other tribes. And I mean, we have to look at the real.